How are you feeling? You got John Riggs here talking about one of my favorite genres of video games, and that would be wrestling games, my friend. Growing up, I wanted to be a pro wrestler so bad. It was one of my lifelong dreams. And now that I'm 6'5", I think I would have been a pretty good one. Except for all my health issues, and my underactive thyroid, and my depth perception. Okay, I may be a big guy, but maybe I wouldn't make the best wrestler anyway. And even though I used to do like backyard wrestling, and I still have VHS tapes that are full of that, that'll probably never make the internet. I want to share with you the 9 wrestling games that came out for the NES. Yeah, we only got 9 wrestling games. You think about 678 licensed games in the United States of America, and only 9 of them are wrestling games? Well, I mean, if you look at it one way, yeah, we only had like 7 golf games, but then we had like 15 or 16 baseball games. So 9 wrestling games, we'll take it. Let's check out the 9 wrestling games that came out for the NES, and I'm going to rank them along the way among themselves. Starting all the way back in 1986 with Tag Team Wrestling from Data East. This game is a game you can't just pick up and play. First of all, the crowd graphics make this game look like it's glitched. Now that's what the game actually looks like. How it controls is once you lock up, you have to hit one of your buttons to cycle through the different maneuvers, and then hit your other button to pull them off. So it can get kind of crazy where you just have to hopefully pull off something and then make it work. It's called Tag Team Wrestling for a reason. You are forced into a tag team match, which is fine, but again, with the weird control method of once you lock up, then you have to cycle through the maneuvers, and it doesn't give you a whole lot of time either. I mean, you have to be quick on it, or you're going to end up losing the lockup, and the computer will definitely take care of you without thinking about it. There is a slight charm to this game, especially for as retro as it is, but with the weird control method, the control scheme, man, this game's really hard to get into. It's still kind of fun to look at once you figure out how to play it, but it's still not that great. I'm giving this game a D. Well, next we have Muscle, and it was called Muscle because Kinnikuman was way too Japanese to say out loud, and they came up with the acronym, which stands for Millions of Unusual Small Creatures Lurking Everywhere, Muscle. I mean, they had to really think about that one, right? I remember them more as like little things that you could get like at the KB Toys and Hobby, maybe even like a 25-cent machine. I'd see these Muscle figures everywhere, and I guess they're still kind of popular for collectors. Well, the Muscle figures were basically wrestling figures, but they'd have like, one would be made out of brick, one would be a knight, stuff like that. And the Muscle Nintendo game, well, it's also not great. It's more of a fighting game than anything. It also puts you in a tag team. Tag team wrestling was very big in Japan, apparently. And your moves are pretty limited. You have your punch, you have a kind of diving kick. If you miss the diving kick, you end up just, landing on your backside and kind of stunning you for a moment. You can bounce off the ropes, which isn't going to do you a whole lot of good. But every once in a while, you can do like a maneuver, like a German suplex, or like a pile driver or something. So that's something at least. But still, when it comes to like good wrestling games, you're not gonna find it with Muscle. As much as I love the charm of the Muscle figures, as much as I love Bandai, as much as I love the Kinnikuman idea, which they also make great games for other systems, the one for the PSP, the one for the GameCube. Great wrestling games. I mean, like, they're up there. I mean, they control like No Mercy and everything. Those are great. This one isn't. I'm giving this game an F. How lucky we had 3 pro wrestling games in 1986. Well, at least they came out in Japan in 1986, I'm sure is what's going on. But pro wrestling, this is the OG, this is the original, this is the launch title. It was a launch title, wasn't it? It was actually one of the first Nintendo games I ever saw in action. They had this at a kiosk at our Yakima Mall that year that the NES came out as a kind of a sales thing. It's like, hey, here's what it looks like, play it, experience it, and if you like it, we'll sell you one right now. But it was so cool to see games like The Legend of Zelda. And I remember specifically someone playing pro wrestling and having a great time and yelling and hooting and hollering and having a great time, and it sold him. He actually bought a Nintendo system and pro wrestling because that's how good this game is. And this game still holds up today. Now, you only have 6 characters, believe it or not. There's only 6 characters you can choose from in pro wrestling. And the movesets, kind of limited, but again, based on like Japanese pro wrestling, it actually has some pretty decent moves in there. Like you can do a pile driver and a suplex, and all the other characters actually have kind of a special move that only they can do. I know a lot of people preferred Starman. I was kind of a Kin Karn guy myself, but I'll play this game as anyone. It's super fun. It's pro wrestling. And the fact that you can throw them out of the ring and then dive out of the ring on top of them, I mean, come on. It's so great, especially for its time. A lot of nostalgia memories for this game. I think it's still fun today. I'm giving this game an S. It may be limited, but man, I love it. We'll We got our first WWF game on the list with WWF Wrestlemania. This game was a big old thank you for trying. This game, man, let me tell you. You can do a one-on-one or like a 6-player tournament, which I think I've actually done once just to say I did. And again, not very many characters you can choose from, but they had kind of the top stars for the time. You had Hogan, Andre, Randy Savage. You also had Ted DiBiase, Honky Tonk Man. My personal favorite of the time, especially for the time, Bam Bam Bigelow, a character in this game. So happy he was in here. But then when it comes to the wrestling part, well, again, it's just more of like a fighting thing. Like you're punching and kicking, or if you're Bam Bam, you're doing headbutts. You know, some characters can do like back elbows. And there's things like not everyone can jump off the top rope. Well, I mean, that makes sense. But there's also like not everybody can body slam. That's interesting. It's really just a lot of attack them and attack them. Like you're not doing, you're not doing body slams or suplexes. You're not doing pile drivers or hip lock takeovers. You're not doing snap bears. You're not even doing like sunset flips or anything. You're just punching and kicking. And I mean, the cool thing with Bam Bam Bigelow is he can do those cartwheels. So that's kind of cool. But really, man, it's like, I thought it looked okay for its time, but it's not a fun game. I'm also, unfortunately, giving this game an F. Soon thereafter, we had WrestleMania Challenge. Now, this is the time when Ultimate Warrior was the champion. Yes, this game is from LJN, but it was made by Rare, something to consider. It also may be the first game where you play as yourself. Yeah, you actually have yourself in there. Well, I mean, if you look like this guy anyway. Is that you? Well, so that's yourself. Another game, not the biggest roster, but with Hogan and Andre and Randy Savage, but now you have Hacksaw Jim Duggan, you have Brutus the Barber Beefcake, Rick Rude available, you got Big Boss Man in here too. Yeah, there's some fun to be had with this game for sure. Gives you a new isometric view with this game anyway. And this game, you can actually do some maneuvers. Yes, you can punch and you can kick and stuff like that too. However, you can also lock up and do a move. You can lock up and do a body slam. If some of the characters have their specialty moves, like so Brutus Beefcake can do the sleeper hold. Rick Rude will do the Rude Awakening. There is a tag team option on this, which is kind of nice to have. And there's not really a whole lot of strategy to this game. It's just, you just kind of walk around this giant ring and then every once in a while, get close enough when you feel anxious enough and, hit the button and hopefully you can grapple and do a maneuver on them. The button is basically just, you do the move. You don't grapple and then choose what move. It's just you hit the button and it doesn't move depending on which way you're facing or whatever. I had a lot of fun with this game. I'm actually going to give this game a B. We're about halfway through the list of wrestling games for the NES in the United States, but what about Japan? Do they have any wrestling games? Well, they had one Famicom game that never came out that was a wrestling game, and that's Token Club right here. I want to show you just a little bit about this game. Like Fire Pro, where it uses like non-licensed, but it's totally you know who they are. And Tony Onoki, you got Abdul the Butcher, there's Giant Baba, a Hulk Hogan looking guy. I mean, that's what this game's all about, really. And this game's kind of visually pleasing too, because it goes from like the side angle to an isometric angle, depending on where you are in the ring when you're wrestling, when you're fighting. I like the chibi style. I like the cartoony style. It's just kind of fun. It's a new look for this game. I would have loved if this game would have come out in America, even as is. I mean, I don't know if they could have got away with, the reasonable likeness thereof like they do in Japan all the time. If you have a way of playing it like through, emulation or whatever, and you haven't heard of it yet, it might be worth looking into. I think it's kind of fun. It's cute, it's neat, it's pretty fun. Still pretty fun, still pretty neat to have, but let's check out the other US wrestling games for the NES. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure you're subscribed. I do new videos all the time. Oh, hold on, wait for it.
World Championship Wrestling!
That's right. World Championship Wrestling. What an awesome game this one was. This game featured a huge roster with 12 wrestlers. So not only do you get the top stars of WCW like Ric Flair, Sting, and more, you even get other guys too that may not have made it to other games like Michael P.S. Hayes, like Eddie Gilbert. It was nice because when you chose which character you wanted to play as, you get to choose which maneuvers you wanted to do too. So if you wanted to focus more on submission holds, you could do that. If you wanted to do more like, just impact maneuvers, you could choose that too. And then every character has kind of a default set of moves too, like the Irish Whip, the Body Slam, stuff like that. The rough part was you had to wear them out before you could lock up with them. So for that, it goes back to you have to punch them, which is short range, or kick them, which is long range. You do it a few times, they get tired, and then once you lock up, then you can choose if you want to give them an Irish Whip, or if you wanted to do one of your maneuvers, and you can charge up your move too, to really give it the most impact possible. And from there, you just keep going and going and going until they're worn out enough that you can, do your moves on them. What was nice about this game is each character also had a finishing maneuver. Unfortunately, this game was imported from a Japanese Superstars of Wrestling game, which had a little mixture of everyone in it, kind of unlicensed. So when they ported it over, Well, like, so Ric Flair doesn't do a figure four leg lock for his finisher, which he should. That's his move. In this one, he does kind of like a guillotine clothesline, which is not a move I don't think he's ever done, but that's what Giant Baba did. So that character's placement is Giant Baba's, maneuver. For other characters it makes sense, like with Sting, well, he took the place of Riki Choshu, who does a Scorpion Deathlock, so perfect. But it is kind of cool that you can go through, and kind of cool that you actually, it's very satisfying to actually pull off your finishing move, put them away, have some fun with this game. I'm a huge fan of WCW wrestling. It's one of my favorites. I'm giving this game an A. 1990 was such a great year for NES. Tecmo World Wrestling came out. Now this game features a variety of generic wrestlers, however, like Akira Dragon, it's probably Antonio Inoki. Back brain kick, German suplex, that sounds about right. El Tigre could be Tiger Mask, or maybe they're just made up and, that's fine. But they also have a couple of finishing moves you can do later in the match too, which is super awesome. Build up your strength before each match with like some training that you can do, which is kind of fun. And then the wrestling itself actually plays pretty well. You can actually lock up with them, you can, attack them as well, but once you lock up, then you can hit one of your directions and hit a button and you'll do some kind of maneuver anyway, hopefully. Hopefully you can pull it off here. I never have enough time to actually read what they're saying, but it's fun that they actually have the commentary while you're playing these games too. I thought that was neat for its time. Super neat. I love that this game also gave you ring awareness. Like if you're gonna do a suplex but you're up against the ropes, you actually kind of pivot your body around until it's clean and safe, and then you do your move. There have been other wrestling games, newer wrestling games, you try to do a suplex, and if you get them into the ropes, you just kind of, collapse and nothing happens. The highlight of this game, without a doubt, is your finishing maneuvers near the end of the match, because then it cuts to like an anime cutscene style to actually show the impact of the move that you're doing, which I thought was super awesome. This is way ahead of its time for its time to do something like this. Tecmo World Wrestling, when it comes to the NES, man, it's one of the best. To me, this game's an S. And then we went for a wrestling dry spell for a couple of years. Not until 1992 did we get WrestleMania Steel Cage Challenge. Now the good news is we got another WWF game with the new roster for its time. So not only got Hulk Hogan, but you also have Jake the Snake Roberts, The Undertaker, and more. The problem though is, man, this game is not great. It really isn't. This game certainly devolved from some of the great wrestling games we had for a while on the NES. And then we go to this, which is supposed to look maybe a little bit more like when you're watching wrestling, but no, like when you're playing a wrestling video game, you just want it to be a fun game. And this game, man, it's not that great. I mean, props for having guys like IRS and Bret Hart, props for having a steel cage match as an option, however, it still didn't help that this game is not great. To me, it's not quite an F, although maybe it is for you. I'll at least put this game as a D. 1993, we have WWF King of the Ring. Decent lineup with guys like Shawn Michaels, Yokozuna. Again, yourself. You can actually make yourself and kind of give yourself your own attributes. And the characters look pretty big, but same with the last game, you don't have your finishing maneuvers. Anyone can look like anyone and it doesn't matter. Shawn Michaels can body slam Yokozuna, it's no problem. I swear this game was made by someone who's never even watched or heard of WWF at the time. Like, the music isn't great. The characters, I mean, they look big, I'll give it that, but I mean, just come on. I mean, the reason why the last game was a D is because this game is an F. Did my list match your list? Let me know in the comments. We also showcased some great non-WWE wrestling games. Make sure you check out this video next. I thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again real soon.